Hey guys, it's Stephanie. Welcome back to my channel. We are on part 3 of the kitchen renovation series. In the first video, I went through the design plan, and in the second video, I covered everything demo related. I'll link those videos in the description below if you want to check those out. In this video, I'll be covering a ton of information, so I'm going to add some timestamps in case you want to jump around. Here is a checklist of the things we need to get through for part 3. Build a header, frame temporary walls, take out load-bearing wall, install header and take down temporary walls, replace door to garage, prep for drywall, electrical and range vent, drywall, arches, tape and mud drywall, plumbing, sanding, then texturing the ceiling. I'll try to link some of the popular tools and materials that we used in the description below. Let's jump on in. The first step is to build the header. We're taking down a small load-bearing wall, so we will need to replace it with a header. The span of our opening requires a 2x12 header, so we used two 2x12s and sandwiched a piece of 1/2-inch plywood in between to match the thickness of our wall. With any major renovation project that involves any structural, plumbing, or electrical changes, you want to check with your local jurisdiction on what permits are required. The cost of permits vary and they can take some time to obtain, so make sure you factor that into your renovation cost and schedule. Before taking out the load-bearing portion of the wall, we needed to frame out a few temporary walls to hold the load. For our temporary walls, we doubled up 2x4s for the top plate, toe-nailed studs about 2 feet apart, and then used a single 2x4 on bottom. We placed the temporary walls about 2 feet from where we're going to install the header to give us enough room to work in. Now that our temporary walls are in place and secure, we can take out the load-bearing wall. We made sure to open the wall enough on each end to install the jack studs. We set the header in place and screwed the header into the king studs that go all the way up to the ceiling. Then we added 2 jack studs under each end of the header and secured those to the king studs as well. I also toe-nailed the header into the top plate. Once the header was in place and secure, we were able to take down the temporary walls, and voila, we have a nice big opening. My dad and sister worked on installing a new door going into the garage. First, they removed the pins so they could take the door off the hinges. They added some adhesive caulk to the floor where the door frame would sit. They set the door frame in place and used wood shims to level it, starting with the top and hinge side of the door frame. They secured the door frame into the door jamb, placing one screw through each of the hinges and wood shims. Once the top and right sides were level, they placed the door back on the hinges, made sure that the door opened and closed nice and smooth, and that the margins were the same all the way around. Then they finished securing the door frame into the door jamb on the left side behind the weather stripping. Make sure that you're screwing into the wood shims to avoid bowing your door frame. Ashley cut off the excess wood shims and then filled in the gap around the door with great stuff. The last step was to install the hardware. There are a few last minute things we need to take care of before we can drywall. We're taking out the top portion of the drain vent stack and modifying it with a mechanical vent so we can keep it all underneath the cabinets. I have to secure this half wall down into the concrete. I'm taking some 2x4s and double plating the top of the half wall so that it's secure and it's the correct height for our countertops. We hired a licensed electrician to install some can lights, rearrange some outlets and light switches, and to get the outlets for our appliances up to code. While they were here, we also had them install 4 can lights in the living room. For electrical work, it ended up costing about $3,800. My dad is working on venting for the range hood. He cut a hole in the roof so that we have good ventilation going outside. I plan to build a custom range hood, so I'll share more details on that later on. Now we're finally ready for drywall. We used 1/2-inch drywall for the kitchen and used some furring strips in certain areas to match the thickness of our plaster walls. We re-secured some plaster where it started to come down at the ceiling, and then secured some backing so that we could patch the big hole in the ceiling. We threw in some new insulation first and then drywalled over the hole. In the kitchen, we secured some wood backing into the concrete. This is what we'll secure our cabinets to when it comes time to install cabinets. Next, it's time to install the arches. We almost forgot this step, but thank God we didn't because I think it adds so much character. I used some scrap 1/2-inch plywood to mark out 4 arches. I took 2 measurements at 14 inches and then used a chalk line to draw out the arch. I used a jigsaw to cut out each of the arches. Then I cut some blocking out of scrap wood to install my arches in each corner. The blocking goes in first. Then I secured each of the 1/2-inch plywood arches into the blocking. I added a few pieces of blocking on the inside to secure drywall to. We attached 1/2-inch drywall to the outside of each arch. Then we wet down the back of a piece of drywall and cut some small slits in order to bend the drywall into the arch. I started at the bottom and added drywall screws every couple of inches all the way up the arch. We are using flexible corner bead and stapling it to each side of the arch. I have a more detailed video on how to make an arch doorway, and I'll link that in the description below in case you want to check it out. Taping and mudding is next. My dad is a taping and mudding guru. He's able to work 10 times faster than I would, so we're very thankful to have him here helping. He started filling all the big gaps with Easy Sand 90 joint compound. It dries in 90 minutes and it doesn't shrink, so it works really well for the big gaps. Then he did a coat of all-purpose joint compound to apply the tape and corner bead. He finished with +3 joint compound for the finish coat. It's lightweight, it goes on smooth, so it's easy to feather out, and it's also easy to sand so you can get a nice smooth finish. While waiting for the mud to dry, we worked on a few plumbing items. We had to plumb in a water line for the fridge, so we tapped into a water line in the garage. We cut into these boards to access the inside of the wall. I added some blocking so we could reattach the boards. On the kitchen side, I cut out a hole for the ice maker outlet box. My dad attached all of the plumbing, and then I was able to close up the hole in the wall. Under the sink, we had to install a few new shutoff valves, and that's about all we need to do for plumbing right now. Sanding is next. Hopefully this is the last time we need to make a big dusty mess. We went around and sanded down all of the joint compound until everything was smooth and even. After everything was nice and smooth, we needed to add some texture to our ceiling and walls to match the texture throughout the rest of the house. It's not a normal orange peel or popcorn texture, so we found this paint texture from Home Depot that matched our old texture perfectly. You just pour this directly into your paint, mix it up, and then paint it on your walls and ceiling. My dad covered the large areas with a roller, and then I took a small roller to patch in any small areas and to feather out the new and the old texture. That was a lot of information. If you're still watching, thank you for making it this far. I really appreciate you following along. Next week, we will be installing cabinets, so you have that video to look for next. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next week.